Today's episode is covering all the things you need to know for planning the perfect trip to Croatia. Whether you have 6 weeks like we did or a shorter amount of time, we give you the must-dos and the definite don'ts. We also cover the places you can't miss as well as the top things to do and see in those places. From the mountains of Istria to the capital Zagreb, the stunning Plitvice Lakes, city walls of Dubrovnik and the Emperor's Palace in Split, as well as the best islands to visit. We cover it all. So please enjoy episode 119. Well, welcome to the Beach Travel Wine Podcast. I'm Leanne and I'm here with my co-host and gorgeous husband. Hello, Lyle.
You're right on the gorgeous husband. Thank you, Leonita.
Now, as I said in the intro, we are doing a bit of a brief episode, that's for Lyle's benefit, to give you a bit of an
What do you mean it's my benefit?
So you don't talk too much.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
No waffling, which is what we're doing right now. So we're going to talk to you about some things that you must know before you go to Croatia to help with your planning and when you're there. And also some of the places. We were there, lucky to be there for 6 weeks. And we're going to give you, if you haven't got that much time, say you've only got 2 weeks, the places that we feel like you definitely should go, and just some hints and things maybe to avoid as well. Yep. That sound like a good plan? So as I said, we were there for 6 weeks and we started in Ravin. We went to Ravin, Zagreb, Plitvice Lakes, Zadar, and then we went to Split, Hvar, Dubrovnik and Korčula. So we did it all. Probably
correct.
Yeah. So let's talk about some things that we found interesting about Croatia, and one of them was obviously the currency is euro now.
Yeah, it's the euro. It's only recently, probably in I think 2023, they went to the euro. Now, a lot of the locals complained that when they went to the euro, everything went up in price. Yes. When they rounded it up.
It's one of those European countries, though, one of the only ones we've been to where more people want cash than use cards. So you will need some cash.
Oh, definitely.
And some places, you just basically, restaurants say cash is king. So you're just going to have some cash because we like to use our card.
Yeah, we use our card for everything. Look, it's not cheap.
No, by any means.
Well, wine.
Let's give an example of the wine because that's how we base a lot of our costs in countries.
Yeah.
And I think we've mentioned this in some of our previous podcasts. And I'm going to put a link to all of these I'll put a link to the Croatian group of podcasts in the show notes because in the podcast player you're listening on, because you can go and check out these individual cities as well. But we did talk a bit about the wine because you pay per 100 mil, right? And sometimes that can be up to €6.
Yeah, and it's anything from about €3.50 to €6 per 100 mil. So, and they generally don't say to you, they don't ask you whether you want 100. They generally just pour 200.
Yeah, they assume that you want 200. We found that the cost more expensive than what we thought it was going to be, the food and drink. However, there are little supermarkets in every town you go to that you can, which we did. We went and bought bottles of wine for under €10 for a bottle.
Yeah.
And they were nice wines that we got, especially in Ravin. What was the wine we were drinking there? The
Malvasia.
We had apartments so we could bought our own tea bags and that sort of thing. And talking of tea bags, I'm probably getting out of order, I know. A lot of places you go and stay in accommodations, they leave you tea bags and coffee and milk and even often water and maybe a packet of biscuits or whatever. Croatia, you get virtually nothing in any accommodation. And if you do get tea bags, they're normally fruit tea bags.
Correct.
We've never had milk once, and definitely no sugar if you want a cup of tea.
Well, I think it's probably just in their culture that's not important to those guys, so that, to Croatians, so they don't do it. But when we'd go out for coffee, we'd steal the sugar and that sort of thing. So, steal's probably, exaggerating.
Well, I didn't use the sugar that they put on mine. I would put it in my bag. So we bought tea bags and made ourselves. Yeah. We drank a lot of black tea as well.
And if you're going to talk about that, you may as well talk about the toiletries.
Yeah, very little. You might get a body gel. They don't use soap, as in they obviously wash, but they don't have cakes of soap. We have cakes of soap anywhere.
No, it
was all gel.
Yeah, all gel.
And sometimes that was all you got. Sometimes you might have got shampoo. So you're definitely going to need to take body lotion and conditioner. And
you do not get face washes.
No face washes. So I took my own as well. So that's just handy to know if that matters to you, which it does to me. What else we're talking? Lyle's done a whole list of tips here, and I've got some as well. So do you want to do some of your other tips there, Dom?
Oh, look, as we were talking about the wine being relatively expensive in the restaurants, but as you said, you pointed out that you could get a really good bottle of wine for around the €8 or €9,
Yep.
and even the wine at about €5 from a takeaway,
Yeah,
was pretty good quality.
Now you had some stuff there about taxis too. So we would recommend do not take a taxi. There are guys that walk around with a lanyard around their neck with a big sign on it saying taxi driver.
It's hilarious.
I know, right? Like, so what? And they've got the yellow taxis. Download the Bolt app or the Uber app and use them only. The taxi drivers everywhere, it's awful to say, they're just out to rip off tourists so much. They charge more than double, sometimes triple, and just don't do it.
It's so
bad.
What's the word? It's so blatant.
Yeah.
That it's almost funny.
Doesn't matter what time of day or night. Use Uber, use Bolt, and they're both good apps. Yes.
Yeah, they were great. Yeah, and as they say, they quite often their meters were broken.
And they don't take cards. Their meters were broken, but also their card reader wasn't working that day, or the internet was down. So yeah, definitely going to.
But look, if you go to these places and are aware of that, and as we're recommending, do the Bolt or the Uber, it's not a problem. No. So that's no problem. Now, just the other, talking about cars.
Yeah.
There's in all these old cities, there's very limited parking. Yeah. Obviously, because most of them are pedestrian, because they're old cities, which means they've been built for horse and cart, not for highways. So just be aware, you're going to have trouble with these old cities with parking.
Now, one of the things that we did find, and I have been sort of criticised by my family for mentioning it every time I talk about
You're
Croatia.
not talking about steps.
I am talking, I'm sorry, it's just we've travelled a little bit in Europe. Croatia has more steps than anywhere I've seen in my whole life, and I wasn't prepared for it. As I keep talking about, I've got a dicky hip, and to look up a staircase and know that your accommodation is 300 stairs up is quite daunting.
That was only in Dubrovnik.
Yeah. Every place we went was stairs everywhere.
Yeah,
so,
I got to say, I thought Italy was bad for stairs.
Yeah.
But I think Croatia beats it by a long way.
And I guess this comes back on me too. When you're booking your accommodation, I didn't actually ask about the access to the apartments. So you can see that the apartment might only have 2 or 3 floors of steps. But what you don't realise is a lot of these places have hundreds of steps to actually get to the apartment as well. Now, we found people to help us, and we paid someone to help us with our luggage. So it wasn't an issue in the end. However, just think about it. And as you pointed out too, there's different entrances into these old cities, whether
different gates.
Yeah, in Dubrovnik or Split or even in Zadar, any of these places. Ask the questions of the accommodation owner. What is the best, easiest way for me to get there with my luggage? So I'm going to avoid the steps that I can. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
And then ask them, like we did, is there someone that can help me with my luggage?
Yeah. And be prepared to pay. I mean, I remember in Dubrovnik there was those 2 girls that had backpacks.
Well, they were pulling them along, then they put them up on the back, and they were just looking up this staircase. And we had this guy, we paid €20 each, and he basically picked up both our bags and put them on his shoulders. We couldn't keep up with him.
Well, we didn't pay €20 each. It was €20.
Oh, okay. Was it?
Yeah. It was only €20, and he carried our bags up, and seriously, well worth it. So don't be shy to ask whether you can have someone help you with your bags. It's worth it.
And the stairs they're old. They're thousands of years old. They're not even. There's no rails. You're gonna, and even walking around these old cities, you're going to be up and down stairs because that's the way they work. Yeah. But it's worth it. And then we would find places where we do extra stairs, like up the vestibule in Split, the one that we went up. Yeah. We paid to go up more stairs, but the views up there and listening to that band singing that was really nice. So
the Clapper.
Yeah, that's it.
That was the name of the group.
Yeah, it was. Now, sorry, you go.
Oh, just that. And the other side of it too, like we were in Split, for instance, we were in a place that had 4 levels of stairs. And the guy that met us there that operated the place, he was fabulous. He basically took the bags off us.
Well, that's what I just said. Ask the people that you're staying with if they can, or someone can help you with your luggage, or stay on water level. You don't have to be up high. We just wanted the views. I would say too, in these cities, what I think is really important is finding out about the history. Now, I know I sort of roll my eyes when Lyle wants to talk about history all the time. This is my personal belief. I don't think you can really understand or appreciate time in Croatia if you don't understand some of the history that the country's been through. And the best way to do that, I think, is through a walking history tour.
Yeah.
Because, look, I know it's beautiful and you've got the water and all the landscapes and all of that, but the history of this country and the buildings, like you can walk past and see these ancient buildings and not know that it was an emperor from Rome who built the palace, or it makes so much difference to know that the fountain in the middle used to have these animals on it and that was an orphanage, and just all this stuff that adds to your appreciation of your stay in these cities.
Yeah, it certainly enhances the whole experience of the holiday. So yeah,
I just don't know how you can walk around an old city and say, "Oh, that's a nice building," and not know about it. I don't understand that. But I think so. Do a walking history tour, and we put links to all the ones that we did. But you can do free tours even, so you don't even have to pay. But you would say you need to know a bit about the history. You don't have to know it as in depth as what you do and the Homeland Wars and all that sort of stuff. But even the wine tours we did were enhanced knowing the history that these grapevines have been through and the hills and the families for thousands of years. Take the chance to swim whenever you can in Croatia. The water is as beautiful as you're going to see anywhere. It's just so clear and so beautiful. And if you go on a boat tour and they say you can jump off the back of the boat, do it. If you're walking like we did around parks and you find a little deserted beach, jump in and have a swim. You won't regret ever jumping in the water in
especially
Croatia.
If you have those water shoes.
That's the other thing I was going to say. It was one thing that we'd read before we went, wear water shoes, wear water shoes, wear water shoes. And we're just like, oh, don't be ridiculous.
Yeah, we're from Australia.
We got thongs, mate. But they'd have sea urchins and the rocks.
And pebble beaches.
Yeah, pebble beaches. So the water shoes, and you could see the sea urchins in some of the places we went, and we were told in others there was some and we didn't see them. So buy yourself, don't have to take them with you. You can buy them for 10 or 12 euro when you arrive. Take them around with you and then leave them when you go. So
I would suggest it is the best investment and most necessary investment that you must make
the water shoes.
If you go to Croatia, the water shoes. Absolutely.
Yeah. And we found a lot of quieter areas to swim just out of the main areas. For instance, in Split and in Zadar, you can get away from the crowds if you just go for a bit of a walk, and you'll find generally where the locals go to the beach. It's not that hard to get away from crowds and crowds of people.
Yeah, and generally it's not that far.
No, exactly. So we did that in a lot of places. So probably one of my best pieces of advice, though, go to the places that are impacted by tourists. Go there as early as possible because you'll get a much better experience. And two of those places that we did were Plitvice Lakes.
Yeah.
And what was the other one?
The Dubrovnik city walls.
Yeah, the Dubrovnik walls. Now, there's a video I was just watching before, just to make sure I got everything included in our highlights podcast. I was watching the Plitvice stories on Instagram, and I still laugh when I watch it. Was that one where we walked in through the gate first? We got there at 6:45. We had our tickets for 7:00, and there was a couple of other people there buying tickets, but we walked in like we were the first people in Plitvice Lakes that day. And I just think that's hilarious because all the talk online and everybody who's gone is saying, oh, it was so crowded, there were tourist buses. And I'm like, we're going to beat this. And
Leanne has forgot to tell you that there were people in front of us that she pushed out of the way so that she could go in first.
That's not true. But the first hour we were basically on our own. We saw two other couples and they were both from Australia as well. And they'd done the same thing.
They were probably from Queensland, early risers.
They bought their tickets online and were there bright and early. So the way to do that is to stay overnight. That's obviously the best way. Now, the Dubrovnik city walls, if you go later in the morning, you're going to be dealing with the heat of the day as well.
Sure.
And the cruise ships that come in and the groups that come from that. And it's going to be much more enjoyable with the less people around. So they open at 8 a.m. and we had our tickets and we bought our tickets online and we went up the stairs. There were a few people around, but we never were held up by people, and we could always take nice photos and enjoy the views without crowds of people. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the people do talk about, overcrowding and that sort of thing. From my personal perspective, I didn't find that at all anywhere we went, whether it be Split, Dubrovnik. I didn't feel uncomfortable with the crowds at all. You'll find that most of the people speak English,
Yeah.
the locals, and that's probably because we were in the more
tourist
areas. And what you don't understand until you're there is how well preserved these buildings are.
That's what I was talking about, the history. Yeah, you've got no idea. And the streets, you're walking on cobblestone streets and the staircases and everything was been there for thousands of years. It's an incredible history lesson all in itself. What about, though, Lyle, we did mention Plitvice. What about the landscapes and the scenery? I mean, come on, you got to say, it's pretty spectacular.
Well, we went to Ravin, which was the first place we went to, and we were recommended to go. And that region is called Istria, that's very influenced with Italian culture because it belonged to Venice for many, many years. But it's lush, it's green, it's all about the olive oil and the wine, and that's where the Malvasia grape is very, very popular, and it became one of our favourite wines.
But I wasn't as prepared for how beautiful just the water, the beaches, even the arid landscapes, how clear the water was.
From going from Istria to
all over Croatia, just how beautiful the nature was. It's just stunning. Even if you're not into wine or history, you're going to be blown away by just how beautiful the country is. Yeah.
Yeah, but the contrast.
Yes.
Like as what I was saying is Istria being green
lush
and
the top half of,
and then you drive through a 6-kilometre tunnel, basically.
Well, from Plitvice sort of through to Dalmatia there.
Yeah, and Dalmatia, it's like a moonscape.
Yeah, but that's stunning in itself.
Sure, in its own way. Yeah.
Have you got any other quick hints?
As far as travelling in between towns or cities,
you need a bus.
Train service is pretty average. There's buses. What we used was private transport.
Not every time, but we used it a bit. Or ferries.
And, ferries, obviously, to the islands. And the ferries, I got to tell you, 15 out of 10 for comfort. The ferries were amazing.
Timing, everything,
And the private transfers, obviously, we had a little bit of concern whether people would turn up on time and that sort of thing, and how they drove and whether they were friendly, whether they spoke English.
Every time they were fabulous.
Every time they were there. We'd go down early, and then as you're aware, probably if you listen to the podcast, Leanne's early to everything. Every time.
Hopefully not my own funeral.
That's fair enough. But every single time, the drivers were there. They were efficient. They were friendly.
And they were also knowledgeable.
And
we learnt so much as well because they lived there and they gave us all this information. So that was really handy. Now, one thing else, the apartments that we stayed in Croatia, I think only 2 of the apartments the whole time we were there had washing machines. So if that's something that's important to you, just make sure you check, because it's not a standard thing in Croatia to have those washing machines. So we got really good at hand washing, and we, once we got to those places with washing machines, we did use them. So let's get on to some of the highlights of the places we went. We started in Ravin. You ready to do that?
Sure.
Now, Ravin, as Lyle's just said a minute ago, is on the Istrian Peninsula, and it still is one of my favourite places in Croatia. I loved it so much. I've never been somewhere that had such gorgeous little winding cobblestone streets with the trees and the flowers and the shops. There's a lot of art galleries, all different types of artisan galleries around with their displays out the front, and the clothes shops and things. The buildings themselves were the beautiful pastel colours of the orange and the yellow and the green. They were beautiful, weren't they?
Oh, look, it was magnificent. As we said earlier, it's very influenced by Italy, and because it's on the border of Trieste and also Slovenia. And actually, the one thing you will first notice is all the street names are both in Croatian and Italian.
Yeah. So we would recommend there, just obviously exploring by foot, but also we did a tour which took us into the mountain towns of Istria.
Yes, that was Porek we went to first, and then there was Groznan,
Groznan, and
Groznan,
Motovan.
and Motovan.
So we would highly recommend finding yourself a day trip from Istria and going up into those mountains because the views,
the landscape, is absolutely
the
amazing.
wine, the truffles. Yeah. And another artisan village was at Groznan. That was a highlight as well. So if you're going to Ravin, do yourself a favour and do a day trip from there.
My favourite wine here
there's a winery
in Motovan, yeah.
Fucking Good Wines, Fakin.
Yeah, and that's how they say it.
Yeah.
And
once again, if you want to check out Instagram, Beach Travel Wine, go up the top and go. You can see all the highlights of the cities we went to. Ravin I probably did more in Ravin than anywhere else. So after Ravin, we went to the capital, Zagreb. There's a couple of little things about Zagreb that. One little thing that was disappointing. We had no idea there was an earthquake there in 2020.
And a major
earthquake. I mean, to be fair, the world was in shutdown with COVID, and they're still doing a lot of reconstruction from that. So a lot of the main buildings, including the cathedral, are being renovated and covered in protective covering.
But there's other parts of Zagreb, because it was under the rule of the Austro-Hungarian, and a lot of their architecture is based on that. There are older, some of the buildings and the gardens.
And just walk. You can basically do a self-guided walk around the green horseshoe, they call it, which is 7 gardens. It's in the shape of a horseshoe. We did a walking tour, which we highly recommend through there too, because we learnt lots. Once again, it's just that history tour, and you find little spots around the city, including the markets. And that was another thing I was going to say about Croatia. Every town we went to had a lovely fresh food markets. I think I've eaten the nicest blueberries, raspberries, blackberries that you could ever. I mean, we just bought them all the time. They were divine, weren't they?
Sure.
And the fun thing in Zagreb was the walking tour culminated at the tower where they shoot a cannon every day. That's worth seeing. And then walking through the old World War II tunnel under the city.
And we also did a wine tour there as well.
Yeah. That wine area out of Zagreb is beautiful.
Yeah, it's in the Uplands wine region, and the sub-region is called the Plitvice. And seriously, the views, in fact, my lovely wife here said she compared it to Tuscany.
For sure. So a lot of people say, Zagreb, there's nothing to do. We love Zagreb. I think it's a fabulous city. And one thing you didn't mention, which we talked about this morning before we started recording, Croatia is one of the safest countries you'll ever go to. And Zagreb, we felt that even though we were walking around the capital of Croatia at night, late at night, you never feel unsafe. It's just a beautiful, safe country to spend time in.
Well, one of the guides told us that it's almost like a cultural thing for the local Croatians to make people feel safe, because
they want them to come back and spend money. They understand that tourists mean money to their economy.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that you've got to be aware of is the public transport in Zagreb. Yeah. It's as cheap as chips.
Yeah, it's like €59 or like 59 cents, isn't it?
Yeah, and basically
one way.
It takes you it's this.
They've got trams and buses.
Yeah, and it's zones. There's zones, and it's like, as Leanne said, it's like 59 cents per zone, and they only go for 2 zones or whatever. But they're fast, and it's so easy.
It's a little bit. I think we did talk about in the Zagreb podcast. There's that main there's 2 main tram lines in that main square of Zagreb, and there's no pedestrian crossing.
It's Russian roulette.
Yeah, you just got to. But you just go with the locals. They know what they're doing. You follow them and you get across. Yeah, that was fun. Now, after Zagreb, we got a private transfer to Plitvice Lakes, which we stayed 2 nights. You need to stay at Plitvice Lakes. And on the way, we were lucky enough to stop at Rastoki. And that's another beauty, like the town. Like, you can't believe it. All these houses are built over rushing waterfalls, basically. You just can't even believe it. It's like out of a medieval fairy tale. One of my kids said it was like Lord of the Rings, they thought, because the cabins are all wooden and old-fashioned, and then you've got like this beautiful big lake or shallow lake in the middle of the town, and then it sort of veers off and goes under all the buildings, and it used to be a mill, so there's a mill wheel, and that's on the way from Zagreb to Plitvice. So chuck that in your must-do is a stop at Rastoki.
Oh, yeah, Rastoki, yeah. And the thing is that it's limestone is the base of the it's base of the houses. That's what they make their flora out of, and also the top of the waterfalls, so that if the water does change direction, which does happen over time, that's just a natural thing, they just move the houses.
Yeah.
So, but you're talking, I don't know how, maybe at places maybe 5 centimeters. That's how close you are to the water.
Sure.
And the houses are built on that. So.
Now, we have mentioned Plitvice. I think it's probably the most beautiful place I've ever been to. I absolutely adored Plitvice Lakes, and I would go back in a heartbeat. I'd love to go back in autumn to see the autumn colours. If someone's going to Croatia, the first thing I'm going to say is go to Plitvice Lakes and do you do the sea track, and you go in entrance 1, and you go as early as you can.
When you say sea track, it's not like at the sea.
No, it's ABC. Yeah. And we've got a whole podcast on that, and the pictures. Oh my gosh, I can't say enough about that.
Yeah, and again, get there before the tour buses, because there's a bunch of them, because it is probably the most popular tourist destination in Croatia, and there are accommodation very, very close to that gate 1.
Yep.
So
just do your research and find what suits you.
Yeah, especially if you know. I mean, there's car parks and that sort of stuff there as well if you drive.
Yeah.
But you can be quite close and walk.
Okay. And the next highlight that we went to after that was Split, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about Split.
It's just awesome. I love Split.
The old town of Split is basically an old Empress Palace, Diocletian's Palace. And as I said, we've got a whole podcast on this. But the highlights of Split is doing a history tour and finding out all about that palace. Like, you're not going to believe it. That was one of the highlights of being in Split. Another highlight for me was the walk we did to the forest park.
Yeah. Marjan.
Yeah, and we hiked for kilometres uphill and up over a hill and down, and on the other side we found the most secluded beach areas, and I felt like I was in a Mamma Mia movie. It was just beautiful, and we walked all the way around that part of the beach back into the city. It was that was one of my favourite things to do. And a hint too in Split, head out of the old city and find where the locals are eating. We had to go out one day, so you had to get your sunglasses fixed, and we were just outside the old city, and we just found this little restaurant. It was just like, it was about half the price of anywhere inside that Diocletian's Palace area, wasn't it?
Yeah, actually, but that's probably a pretty good general rule. I think there's all sorts of places that are outside the old city which are going to be cheaper.
And then there's the main promenade,
Yeah, which they call the River, which is RIVA, and that's the promenade. That's where all the locals sit and drink their coffee.
Oh, that's where you need to sit and people watch.
And check out all the good.
And do a boat tour from Split too. Hop on one of the boat tours and head out. We did that.
We did too. Where do we go on that?
Blue Lagoon.
We did. We did.
Yeah, so certainly Split's a highlight. Once again, it was one of those places that was a little bit controversial, that people are like, I'm not that fond of Split, but we loved it.
Oh, I thought it was fabulous.
Yeah.
It's I I can't say I'd toss up between there and Dubrovnik, because Dubrovnik is like.
Let's talk about that now.
One more thing. Yeah. We can't forget.
That we did a wine tour there as well.
Wine tour, and
there's a bit of a theme here: walking tour, wine tour. You're going to find out everything you need to know about a city and an area by doing both of those things. Like, even if you're not into wine, there's a group on this wine tour that probably weren't big wine drinkers. Go out into the countryside.
Yeah.
And you are talking to people that have lived and worked there, and their ancestors have, so they have a real connection to the land and a love of the land, and then they also have the local produce, so you're getting the local meats and the local cheeses and olive oils and those sorts of things as well. So it's a whole gourmet food
it's
experience.
A package. The Split wine tour we did, I would have to say, probably the best one I've ever been on.
And we did a whole podcast just on that as well.
That's how good it was.
Yeah. So then we went, one of our other favourite spots was, of course, you can't go to Croatia without going to Dubrovnik. And it's, look, how do you describe Dubrovnik? Unique.
Game of Thrones.
There's just nothing like it in the world. Dubrovnik is incredible, and I'd go back there as well. I'd
go back in a heartbeat.
Yeah, it's just the city walls walk. Imagine just walking nearly 2 kilometres around the walls like they were thousands of years ago, protecting the city. It's just nothing like it. And then as you said, Game of Thrones, the Jesuit stairs, the old port area, Wow, I was blown away. And the whole way around Dubrovnik, the little shops and the little cafes and the cobblestone streets that you just walk around and find another plaza. And when we watched a game there of the Euro Cup football, and we had a great night.
And a little Irish bar of all places.
And we did a history tour there, which was one of the best we've done too. The local guide.
The walking tour,
The walking tour was just amazing. A couple of things that we highly recommend you do besides the city wall walk, obviously. And you can do that on your own. You can do a guided one, a guided walking tour. That was fascinating. And then go to the cave bar. That was fun. We went with our friends Kobe and Kev from Western Australia, and the bar is in a cave. Yeah, literally. And there's about 5 or 6 different levels of this cave where you can sit. It was great.
I thought that was fabulous. Yeah. The fit out of the actual cave bar, the lighting, and how they illuminate the rock. And it's not far from the old town. It's like 5 minutes in a taxi.
I've got photos and videos of that.
Not a taxi, an Uber or whatever. Yeah. I think we used Uber that particular time. So it's not far. In fact, I think we walked most of the way back.
Yeah.
But it was fabulous. And, of course, you need to book this very early, but there's a restaurant called the Panorama Restaurant. And you catch a cable car up from the old city, up the hill. It's about 280 metres. The views, seriously to die for. Food was great. The wine was even better. And the company was perfecto.
Yeah, I did enjoy that. Cable ride, not so much.
Oh, it was all right.
Yeah. I don't like heights, so I was trying to be brave. But, yeah, the views from up there, you look back down over the whole old city and you realise just how compact it is. You can see all the city walls as well as all the bastions and the old port.
And the backdrop to that is the Adriatic Sea.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, you've got to go to Dubrovnik, for sure. And probably the last highlight, I know we've missed a few out, but one of the ones the islands. So we went to Hvar and we went to Korčula. And for us, Korčula wins the Battle of the Islands.
Yeah, well, you're going from one extreme to the other, really.
Hvar is glamorous nightlife, super yachts, etc. Whereas Korčula is, they call it mini Dubrovnik. It's got a tiny little old town, which when you look down on it, it looks like Dubrovnik. The cobblestone streets, the quirky little shops and restaurants there as well. And so there's a lot of history there. And it's also known for its wine. We did a fabulous wine tour there, which we highly recommend. And the scenery on the way of that wine tour, you don't realise just how beautiful that island is.
Like all the wine tours we did, I think the bonus that we didn't expect was to actually see the beautiful scenery in the countryside.
And I think Korčula is also more for maybe our demographic a bit more, because although we did come across quite a few groups of young people, it's also popular for e-bike tours and e-bike wine tours, Korčula. So, and the Sail Croatia boats stopped there. And the other thing about Korčula that we liked was the water taxi, and you could just hop on that for
that was brilliant.
€10 and just go over to a little island. And we went to this little island. I think there was 10 people on the whole thing. We had a chair. We sat there all day under the shade. They kept coming, bringing us drink. It was just wonderful.
Yeah.
I loved Korčula. I thought it was a great little island.
Yeah, well, Korčula, they're world renowned for the Poship grape, and we tried that wine, and it was brilliant. Now, you don't have to go to the wineries. One of the things that in Korčula, because it's so known for its wine region, there's a bunch of wine bars actually in the old city.
Yeah, so they have wine from all the wineries.
Yeah, so you can do tastings in this tiny little city.
Yeah.
There's lots of bars or wine bars that you can do that. So, which I thought was excellent.
One of the other things that I think Croatia is famous for is its sunsets. And there were 3 places in particular, maybe 4, that I'm thinking I was just blown away. The first one was Ravin, and there's a whole group of restaurants and people gather at that spot to see that. Korčula was another one. Yeah. Where else were the sunsets nice? Do you remember?
I think probably the best one was Zadar.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned Zadar because it's much a quiet town and not a lot of people go there. But if you want a bit of a more laid back feel and the sunset there, like,
Was stunning.
yeah, it was stunning. And probably my favourite, though,
Yeah.
was in Split, watching it from our balcony.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
In Croatia, you're going to have beautiful sunsets. You're going to have fabulous wine. You've got gorgeous, clear blue water wherever you go. The scenery is amazing, and you're not going to be disappointed no matter what cities you go to. But if you only have 2 weeks and you had to cut it down to 4 places, I would say these are my 4. Okay, I'm going to Ravin.
Yep.
I'm going to Zagreb, and including in that Plitvice.
Yep.
I'm going to Dubrovnik.
Yep.
And I'm actually going to go to Korčula, but I think you would go to Split.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd definitely go to Split. Yeah, it's pretty hard for me to separate Split and Dubrovnik, to be honest.
Yeah. So, okay, anything else you want to add about travel?
Well, they say that the Roman ruins in Croatia are better preserved than they are in Rome. And I'd have to say I agree with it.
Yeah.
Like the ruins and the old towns are so well preserved. Amazing.
But yet, on top of all that, though, the history, as I said, you've got the water activities and the bluest water, and just going up on the back of a speedboat, looking back over the Blue Lagoon, and then stopping at some of the islands. Like, there's a little place that we had a day trip out of Zadar, and we were in our own little secluded island, and they cooked the fresh fish on the boat and
on the way out.
And we're just sitting there, like, it was amazing. And people were jumping off the boat, and we've got so many memories of the scenery, and the water and the history, and the wine. They're the things that stand out for me.
Yeah, I think that our 2 main places in Europe that we've spent a lot of time in, which is both Italy and Spain, and both those places are uniquely amazing. But I think Croatia, for totally different reasons, is just as unique and awesome.
Yeah. I think just before we finish, we looked at doing a South Croatia cruise, and there's different levels of that. Some of them are like a catamaran, and the ones that we saw when we were there were much bigger.
Cabin cruises.
Yes, and I think if your budget stretches that far.
Yeah, I think on average they have about 20 cabins.
Right, okay. I haven't seen the price on those, but at the time that we were looking, it was going to cost about 8,000 Australian dollars for 1 week, and we just figured we could go a lot further with that on land. But if you want to have if you only got short time and you've got the money to spend, check out those South Croatia cruises, because you start at Split, you go around the islands, and you end down at Dubrovnik, and as long as you can chuck in a visit to Istria and Plitvice Lakes, you've got it all covered.
Yeah, well, when we arrived in Split, we saw them lined up, and both Lan and I went, wow. We didn't expect them to be this good.
Yeah, that good. So,
it was very impressive.
So just one last time, we're going to finish up with our Highlight Croatia podcast. Before I do that, every day I'm getting somebody message me on Instagram or sending me an email asking me questions, and I've been able to send people links to accommodation and give them advice. So if you've got any questions you'd like answered about, or any of the places we've been, but particularly about Croatia, send an email to Leanne at beachtravelwine.com, and I promise I'll get back to you and give you as much information as I can. So to finish off, you only got one place to have a glass of wine in all of Croatia. Where would that be?
The winery at Split.
Okay. Watching the sunset as the sun was setting.
I'm just trying to think of the owner's name there.
Anton.
Anton, yeah.
Kovac Wines, it was.
Yeah. Thanks, Leanne. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, okay. We didn't have a glass of wine there, but if I could, I would have one.
On the wall?
No, Plitvice Lakes.
Oh, see.
Yeah, like that secret view spot that we had.
Yeah.
Standing down there with a glass of wine. I felt so privileged to find that little spot. And actually, someone emailed me about that, and like, can you tell me exactly where it is? I've booked that they're going, and I'm like, sure, I can tell you. So if you want to know where that secret spot is, let me know, because that's where I would have my old glass of wine for sure. Yeah.
And I'm just thinking about on the wall in Dubrovnik, just looking out over the
Sure.
Adriatic.
Yeah,
Man,
that'd
on
be.
the day that we did it, it was so nice.
Even like, well, in Motovan too, up, like that was nice to have wine there.
Yeah.
Or a vin in some of those, like, yeah, we had some
So
nice
really,
wines watching sunset.
really, what you're saying is, everywhere we went
Yeah.
there was places
Well, and we
to have the perfect glass of wine.
we had the perfect glass of wine with some friends that we made too. Anyway, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from her.